Bethesda is finally talking more about Starfield. It did take 2.5 months, but we finally have more information. This in the form of an email that went out earlier today. Basically, if you go into Starfield's official website, it'll ask you to join Constellation, join their mailing list. So I feel like 95% of the time, that's pretty inconsequential, but no, this time it was legit, as just for those people, an email was sent out with 3 unlisted videos on YouTube. These giving some background and a bit of lore on 3 of the locations that were teased in the past, mostly just with concept art. And this is actually really interesting. With this in particular, it's one of those situations where if you have additional context and some of the background knowledge on Starfield, there is way more information to extrapolate from this given here, which thankfully if you're watching this video, you will get that additional context and additional information. So first off, just the email itself, it did say, recently Bethesda Game Studios revealed a behind-the-scenes video that shed light on the process and inspirations for Starfield. This being that past video that came out already, I'll have a link to it down below if you're interested. In that video, we gave a brief look at 3 very distinct locations: the United Colony's capital city, New Atlantis, the pleasure city of Neon, and the capital of the Free Star Collective, Akila. As a member of Constellation, you are the first to get new insights on these 3 distinct locales from design director Emil. And then the 3 videos are basically a piece of animated concept art with Emil commentating over it and giving some lore.
What you're looking at here is the spaceport of the city of New Atlantis, the capital city of the United Colonies, or UC, the most powerful, established military and political faction in the game. The city is a true melting pot, and its residents come from every race, creed, and ethnicity. In a lot of ways, New Atlantis is a true reflection of the future of our world.
So New Atlantis is actually one of the interesting places in Starfield, as we actually know the most about it. We've been seeing it the most often. So right off the bat, it's the capital of the most powerful faction. That makes it seem pretty important. But even further, we actually do travel here in that Starfield trailer. At least that is where our destination is targeted as. So likely when we actually get Starfield, this will be one of the first places we go to. And for that leaked design document, which we'll talk more about, actually a lot about later on, we do know that New Atlantis is located on the planet Jemison and in the Alpha Centauri system. But otherwise, it is pretty interesting that this is just the spaceport for New Atlantis, and it looks massive. Makes me wonder if this means the game will feature parts of planets as visitable, very similar to what happened in the Outer Worlds. So in the Outer Worlds, you would fly to a planet and then have distinctive landing ports, which were kind of contained open world areas. But of course, you couldn't go to the entire planet. They're just specific locations. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if in Starfield, we can go to the New Atlantis spaceport, but perhaps not all of New Atlantis also. Unless that's not a thing, in which case this game is just going to have an unreal scale to it. United Colonies being the most powerful of the factions is actually pretty interesting, but we'll return to that a little bit later on. And one of the other lines we can look way too deeply into from this one is how Emil says the residents here come from every race, creed, and ethnicity, which is a pretty interesting breakdown. Now again, maybe I'm just reading way too deeply into this, but could he mean creed as in their religion, ethnicity as in where they are from, their cultural background, and race being whether they are human or not, whether or not there's actually going to be alien races or even human hybrid races, as this is, again, the future. But the next up, we do have Neon.
What you're looking at here is the pleasure city of Neon. The Xenofresh Corporation built a giant fishing platform on a rather nondescript aquatic world. They wanted to catch fish until they discovered a fish with psychotropic properties. They could make way more money selling a drug than they could fish. That drug is Aurora and is legal only on Neon. People come from all over to experience it and everything else Neon has to offer.
So Neon was easily one of the most interesting cities we saw. I actually thought this would be New Atlantis. It just seemed like it would be a New Atlantis type location. Something pretty interesting with this one is that the thumbnail in the email is actually different than the thumbnail of the video, but also the concept art being shown in the video. So clearly they're the same location. It actually looks like the thumbnail in the email is an updated version of this. And unfortunately, we can't really get a higher resolution version. It again was just that little part of the overall email image. And the updated updated version, it looks really cool. Like some of the buildings do go through the roof or dome that protects the city, and also part of the city is not covered at all. It also looks like on the side there's actually an entire platform to land on, and then we'll likely transport you into the city. With this being a space tourism style city, you imagine there's going to be a lot of landing and taking off here. And to me, based on the description they give of this one, it almost is described as like a futuristic Las Vegas. Like it's a popular destination, it's this interesting partying city where you can only get certain chems. But also something else that stood out to me was how they described this as being corporation controlled. As Xenofresh founded the city and then found the unique opportunity with the local fish here. Corporations in Bethesda games in the past have always been handled pretty specifically, and this is basically all in the Fallout universe, where sometimes they'll have a couple of locations, but in Fallout, of course, they're mostly deserted, and a lot of the time, these corporations aren't really acting as a major faction. Conversely, here, it seems like this city is going to be corporation controlled. They are likely the ones policing it, actually make money off of it, and it almost gives me Outer Worlds vibes yet again. And it'll be interesting to see what that dynamic is. Will corporations be a relevant part of this universe? People that actually control space station cities that we can work for? Where typically that role is more or less just filled out by some of the major factions like Vault Tech, Brother to Steel, the Enclave, etc. But then finally we do have Akilah.
Behold Akila City, the capital of the Freestar Collective, a loose confederation of 3 distinct star systems. The city itself is home to a variety of people, but they all have one thing in common. They believe in the sanctity of personal freedom and individuality. Akila City is walled for a reason, and stepping outside those walls means facing the deadly Ashta, alien predators that are a cross between a wolf and a velociraptor.
So we get another faction name dropped here. Freestar Collective made up of 3 star systems. We get a description of those vicious sounding alien creatures just outside the wall of Akilah, and something of note thus far with Starfield. Even though I mentioned that stuff about aliens earlier in this video, thus far we've only really had confirmation of aliens as not higher intelligence and just kind of miscellaneous enemies. Obviously we hear about them here as kind of an enemy creature, but also we had that other concept art image where we could actually see aliens of some kind. There's a lot of speculation that Starfield will have some kind of first contact interactions, or maybe even just aliens will be assimilated with the regular human people. But either way, we don't know thus far. We know aliens will be a part of this game, but we don't know if they'll be smart aliens. The mention of personal freedoms is also pretty interesting. It seems like that they, right at the forefront here, are teasing culture as a potentially major component. It seems obvious why that would be a bigger factor with Starfield. Unlike past Bethesda games, this time you're traveling far distances. You're going to entirely different planets. Of course, the people are going to act different, believe in radically different things from one planet to another. But it'll be interesting to see how that's actually reflected in the game. I think one of the big advancements we see with Starfield and these engine upgrades is in the AI of these worlds. And you have to imagine that the people of Akilah will act differently due to their individualistic ideology compared to, let's say, some of those spaceports we saw before, or maybe they don't feel exactly the same way, or in particular if you look at Neon. Although on that note, I think it is also worth highlighting just the sheer diversity of these locations. We have a walled-in city that obviously can't completely wipe out the surrounding animals, so they had to build a wall to protect themselves. It's almost like a cowboy-esque era going on here. Conversely, you have this extremely high-tech spaceport controlled by a massively powerful faction, and then a Las Vegas at sea, which is literally described as a pleasure city. That's about as different as you could possibly get as far as these 3 locations they've teased thus far, and it definitely gets me excited. Even further, with the description of Akilah specifically, how they describe it being a walled-in city, it does give you some sense of the scale here. Of course, there's going to be the city itself you can explore and probably do quests among other things in, but then also you could leave the walls. You'll have that outer wilderness area. In my head right now, the way I imagine Starfield working is pretty similar to the Outer Worlds again, where you kind of go to specific locations on a planet. And I think in a way this actually reinforces that. The Outer Worlds has had several cities like that, where you went to one specific location and then there was a bunch of other stuff just outside of it, but it was more barren or that wilderness-esque area. I just imagine with Starfield, it'll be on a much, much larger scale with many more places to visit. But when you take this newest information in tandem with that leaked design document, I think it actually gives us a pretty good indication as to what one of the major plot points of Starfield will be. So this design document document seems to have been kind of deliberately shown off. It was shown off in the behind the scenes video. It was on a big screen, although it was from afar. Bethesda obviously knows if it's on screen, fans will try their hardest to decipher those minuscule words, and they did quite successfully this time around. And specifically what this design document is a piece of game lore. It looks like it's a note being sent by United Colonies. United Colonies, of course, we just heard about as the most powerful faction with their capital in New Atlantis. And they say, urgent communique, please be on alert. Pirates of the Crimson Fleet have extended far beyond the Crick system and have established foothold in Sagan, Cheyenne, Lunara, and the Narion systems. Both SysDef and Vanguard are committed to ridding United Colony space of these parasites. This is clearly no longer just a Free Star Collective problem. Free Star Collective being that faction made up of 3 star systems and being the owners of Akila. We just saw them earlier. Also be advised that the Crimson Fleet is not a single organized entity or faction. Rather, it is a loose confederation of individual captains all organized under the same banner. So here's their symbol, or Jolly Roger they've adopted. Anyone displaying the symbol is assumed to be associated with the Crimson Fleet and can be terminated at will. So basically what it's saying is that the world of Starfield has a pirate problem. And I would say it looks like a massive pirate problem. Free Star Collective is made up of 3 star systems, and clearly they couldn't handle it alone. It says the Crimson Fleet was too big of a problem for them to fix, and now it is also bleeding into United Colonies territory. We hear about in this video how the United Colonies is the single strongest faction. Even they are having an issue with these pirates. It's clearly described how the pirates have established a foothold in United Colony locations. To me, this seems like it'll be a major plot point. Maybe we're brought in as a mercenary to help fight the pirates. Maybe that's the start of the game. But alternatively, it could just kind of be the overall backdrop. We are in a system at war. These major powerful factions are trying to fend off against these kind of loosely connected pirates that are all over the place and taking over quickly. And all of this does seem to be connected. The 2 factions Bethesda officially showing off being of the couple of factions we hear about in the leaked design document is no coincidence. They probably knew that, and that's why they're releasing this specific information. But overall, this all serves to just get me more and more hype for this game. It looks like these constellation logs with little lore tidbits and pieces of background and information are continuing. Finally, something that doesn't really matter per se, but I found particularly odd with all of this was the rollout was kind of random. Now, perhaps it is just because these 3 videos really are just that short and don't necessarily contain a ton of information on their own, but they are dropping this just after QuakeCon and when Gamescom is going on. You would think, especially with QuakeCon, Bethesda's own event, maybe they just pop in a little tease here or there like they did with Skyrim Anniversary Edition for some of the new Starfield stuff. It would have made a lot of sense, I think. Either way, I'm not complaining. We got it one way or another, and hopefully it's not another 2.5 months until the next update. Perhaps something in a month or 2 would be fine. Either way, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. Hopefully you guys found this video informative. Finally, some more Starfield content. But with that said, I hope to see you all next time. Later.